Hello everyone, I'm Santiago, and today I'm gonna be testing We Happy Few, the full game, on the GeForce GTX 1050 Ti. I'll be doing 1080p, 900p, 720p and 1440p. To skip to those sections of the video, check the timestamps down in the description. So well, first of all, I'll show you 1080p on the G4560 using the highest settings, and that was enough to be over 30 frames per second the big majority of the time. Then I switched to 720p, targeting 60 frames per second, just to show if the G4560 is capable or not to just maintain that frame rate. Unfortunately here that's not the case. You'll notice once you see the i3 8100 using the same settings. After that I switched to the i3 8100 and I'll show you 1080p targeting 60 frames per second, which means that I lowered the settings trying to be close to 60 frames per second, which in this game is very difficult. Then I crank up the settings to the max to see what frame rate we get, and I'll do the same on 900p, two configurations. Then at 720p I show you the maximum settings like I did on the G4560, and you'll notice that the overall frame rate is higher, especially when looking far into the distance. I'll talk more about that later in the video. And finally at 1440p I use pretty much high settings. I turn off anti-aliasing, lower post-process to medium, so we have some sort of ambient occlusion going on, and I lowered view distance, light and shadows to high, and that was enough to be over 30 frames per second all the time. If you want smoother frame rates at 1440p, you can do so just fine, but you have to massively lower the graphical quality. For example, shadows, you might need to turn them off, which makes the game look significantly different. But if you're okay with that, you might be able to maintain 40 to 60 frames per second, depending on what's going on screen. So in the options menu, the options that gave me the biggest difference in performance were the usual ones in Unreal Engine 4 titles, just shadows, effects and post-process. Those three options in my opinion are the most important ones if you want better performance. If you put post-process on low, you won't have any ambient occlusion, plus some of the filters on screen are just removed, so that impacts the aesthetic of the game a little bit, I would say. Then the big difference I noticed with the effects quality was that there were no screen space reflections. There are some places that there's some still water in the floor that just generates screen space reflections, but that was the biggest difference so far. And the shadows option is the quality of the shadows. It seems to be the resolution of the shadows. You can also choose to just disable shadows altogether, which is a massive FPS boost. So just lower shadows, effects and post-process, and if that's not enough, lower the other options in groups. Unfortunately, as other people were saying online, the game is not performing optimally. When you're looking far into the distance, you can get much lower frame rates. In those cases, usually the GPU usage drops, which might tell us that it's the CPU that is being the limiting factor, but I tried with better CPUs and those drops in the frame rate still happened. There seems to be a thing with optimization, especially one of the towns I test in this video, that there's a lot of people just waiting for me outside. I usually get drops below 60 frames per second no matter what, using an i5 8400, but it wasn't a massive difference compared to the i3 8100. So usually if you have a quad-core CPU, it should be enough. If you have a 2-core 4-thread CPU, it will be slower. I stopped noticing big differences in performance once I got to the quad-core CPU. Over the quad-core CPU, it wasn't a huge difference while looking far into the distance, so keep that in mind. But yeah, overall the biggest performance hits was, again, looking far into the distance where there's a lot of stuff rendered, many NPCs on screen, plus you're getting effects on screen. So if you're fighting, for example, and you're getting rocks or something thrown at you, you can usually get some effects on screen. That mixed with looking far into the distance can be a big impact in performance. So the game feels very inconsistent. Maybe you're just looking to a place, you get like 60 frames per second, then look into the other way and you get 120. It can be very variable, and usually when there's a lot of foliage on screen, the GPU suffers the most. But yeah guys, that's pretty much it. I hope you keep enjoying the video. Thanks for watching and see you next time.
I don't think my suit is decent anymore. I could wear it around the garden district, but proper folk will have me pegged for a wastrel.
I suppose he's just another rotten downer like us.
Welcome to the bloody garden district.
He's on!
sure it doesn't kill you?
What the hell?
It occurs to me that the locals may not be all that welcoming.
Come in!
I don't think my suit is decent anymore. I could wear it around the garden district, but proper
I suppose he's just another
folk will have
rotten
me pegged
downer
for a
like
wastrel.
us.
Welcome to the bloody garden district.
What a waste.
How do you think I used to run 100 metres?
You won't intimidate me with that. Put that away, or I'll call the bobbies.
You're V-meat! You're all V-meat!
You can't kill all of us.
It occurs to me that the locals may not be all that welcoming.
Come in!
I don't think my suit is decent anymore. I could wear it around the garden district, but proper folk will have me pegged for a wastrel.
I suppose he's just another rotten downer like us.
Welcome to the bloody garden district.
doesn't kill you. I can't keep doing this. It occurs to me that the locals may not be all that welcoming.
Come in!
I don't think my suit is decent anymore. I could wear it around the garden district, but proper folk...
I suppose he's just
Well,
another
let me pick for a
rotten downer
wastrel.
like us.
Welcome to the bloody garden district.
What a waste of time. Jesus. Oh my God. Maybe I should sit down for a bit. occurs to me that the locals may not be all that welcoming.
Come in!
I don't think my suit is decent anymore. I could wear it around the garden district, but proper folk will have me pegged for a wastrel.
I suppose he's just another rotten downer like us.
Welcome to the bloody...
Shit! It occurs to me that the locals may not be all that welcoming.
Come in!
I don't think my suit is decent anymore. I could wear it around the garden district, but proper folk will have me
I suppose he's just another rotten
pegged for a
downer like
wastrel.
us.
Welcome to the bloody garden.
What a waste of time.
Put that down, you maniac! They're gone! They won't go away! Oh God, they won't go
I'm getting old.
I see you!
You did it!